Hi, this is Rahul Reddy. We are live from Houston, Texas. Along with me is Gabriela. Today Emily is on leave, so Gabriela is going to replace Emily with regards to answering your questions as Reddy Newman PC does live session every week on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Central Time. Thank you guys for logging in, and if you have any questions, please post it on the Facebook and we will be able to answer those questions. Gabriela, the main thing that is sticking right now seems to be that the USCIS updating on the website that the STEM extension people who are eligible to apply, who are eligible to work after the first year of OPT if they have a STEM degree, for those 2 years, the USCIS updated saying that they cannot work at the third-party site. Mm-hmm. What do you feel about it? Is that something, is that a law? Is it a regulation? How did the USCIS come with this principle there?
So these were actually regulations that were added in when it was extended from 17 months to a 24-month extension. And so even though these regulations have always been there, it's not something that's been enforced. And what this new administration has done now is change the interpretation of what was already there. And so right now what we're doing is we're playing much more of a wait and see type of game. But what we are cautious about is that it's now going to be an issue, not necessarily at the OPT stage, but actually at the H1B stage.
Yeah, as we have discussed within our staff meeting, that this 983 interpretation that the person cannot work at the client site location, it's just a website update they have done. They have not gone through the proper regulatory process. As Gabriel was telling, that the regulations were being issued when 17 months were being extended to 24 months because of the court case. At that time when the regulations were being passed, they did not mention anything about not working at a third-party location. However, in the website update, they just came up and they're interpreting that. Have you seen any RFEs, Gabriela, on the issue of third-party placement when the person is working at third-party placement for the consulting companies in the H1B RFEs?
Yes, this is one of the new issues that we've just now started to see as the quota RFEs are coming in for this year's quota cases. And it's where they're asking us to prove that the employer always maintained their employment relationship, and they're asking to explain how that was possible and how the training was possible when the person wasn't even at the employer's location.
How do you intend to respond to that RFE?
So we're going to attack it at this point from more of a public policy type standpoint. For years we've had these projects getting approved, and then on top of that you have the DSO and you have USCIS approving these projects. So now to retroactively say, yes, we approved it then, but we're going to say that it wasn't acceptable now and punish you for the entire duration rather than from just now when we're making this determination. It's not. That's how we're going to attack it. We're gonna say that's not okay. You can't retroactively change something that you yourself have been approving.
But it's going to be a problem for a lot of people if they denial. Have you seen any approvals where you responded to the RFEs on that? Have you seen any denials yet, Gabriela?
We haven't yet. Like I said, these are all coming in with this new wave of quota RFEs. So we're just now getting the RFEs. It's definitely going to be an uphill battle, but we're going to do our best to try and win them over with the public policy argument.
Do you think so the TN visas and the H4 EADs are on the menu for the Trump administration, Gabriela?
It's pretty safe to say that everything is on the menu right now. But yes, we have heard that the TN visa will be up for debate, as well as many of you have probably already heard, the H4 EAD. We should be getting more answers on the H4 EAD soon.
The question from Samuel that comes out, can we file an I-140 when the H1B amendment is pending? Yes, It's absolutely not a problem. You can file a H4E, you can file an I-140 when the H1B amendment is pending. That's not going to be an issue at all. Gabriel, another question that came out is that if the H1B is being denied, when the person is in the cap gap, just for the audiences to know what a cap gap is, if the STEM extension or OPT is expiring between April and September 30th of this particular year, and if H1B is selected in the lottery, they are entitled to work until September 30th. Now, if the H1B is denied, can they work until September 30th?
No, they can't, and you just explained why they can't. Because that cap gap, it gives you a bridge until the case has been adjudicated or until September 30th. So once your case has been adjudicated, that's the decision. You need to stop working and you need to leave the country or find some other alternatives.
What if by September 30th, the H1B is not adjudicated and they're in the cap gap? Can they continue working after September 30th, Gabriela?
No, if they don't have any other kind of work authorization, then they do need to stop working until their case has been adjudicated.
Some questions coming up. Let's see. If the person's H1B is not stamped, H1B, H4 is not stamped, can they go to Caribbean islands for a cruise and come back into United States? The I-94 is valid, but the passport visa stamping is there. Can they come back into this country?
Yes, so as long as the I-94 is valid, they can travel within a certain range, as long as they're not doing so for more than 30 days. So, for instance, if you're just taking a cruise or a quick vacation, then you can leave the country and come back in without issue.
If the H1B is rejected, the H1B extension is rejected, can the person move to the H4 visa?
So if you have a valid I-94 and let's say your H1B gets rejected and your spouse is on H1B, you can make that transition. You can file for an adjustment of status and go on to H1B. However, if the I-94 is not valid anymore, it's already expired, then the fastest thing and the best way to handle that would actually be to leave the country, go back to, for instance, India, if that's where you're from, and re-enter with your spouse's approval notice. And when you re-enter with that approval notice, you'll go ahead and get your H4 at that point.
Madhu is asking the question in the Facebook Live is, how is a success chance for the H1B's first time going in stamping? Do you advise them going for stamping, Gabriela?
I would only advise going for stamping if your I-94 hasn't been approved. If your I-94 has been approved and your H1B has been approved, then we don't advise leaving and dealing with the consulate, because you don't want to run into an issue where you get a 221G and the consulate starts re-adjudicating your case.
As we discussed, Gabriela, that Trump is building an invisible wall, and we are seeing a lot of problems with regards to how the immigration is interpreted. What are all different things I've been noticing in the past one and a half years since the Trump administration has come into?
Yeah, there have been a lot of issues that we've been seeing. We generally get them in waves with the RFEs. So one of the first issues you may have noticed was that computer programmers sort of came under fire with this new interpretation that a computer programmer couldn't be a specialty occupation. From that, we moved to the next really big issue last year was the wage level 1 issue, where we were getting these RFEs saying, well, if this person's a wage level 1, meaning an entry level employee, then how can it be a specialty occupation? Which is kind of a ridiculous question. If a doctor graduates from medical school and gets a job, they're an entry-level employee, but nobody would question whether or not that's a specialty occupation. They're still a doctor. Another big issue has been proving the specialty occupation, and that has been a big issue because the documents that used to be acceptable, such as just a basic contract between the the petitioner and the vendor and a letter stating these are the job requirements, that's no longer enough. Now USCIS wants contracts between every single party and purchase orders between all the parties, and these documents are usually very hard to get. So that's been the big issue now. What we're expecting next, as we said earlier, is this F1 issue. If you were on STEM OPT extension and you were at a third-party site, then how do you prove that you had a bona fide employer-employee relationship? And then we're also expecting issues with as we said, the H4 EAD, and some reinterpretations or redefining of various relationships. So that's what we've seen so far.
Yeah, and then just for the audiences to know that this Trump administration came to power with an anti-immigration policy. Initially, we did expect that he's going to go with the undocumented aliens, particularly for those people who have criminal records. But it looks like he went after all those people, 900,000 people who got employment authorization, he canceled by single stroke. Now he has separated families, including 3-year-old girls, from their mothers and put them in a different detention centers, separating the 3-year-old girls with that of their mothers. This is just illegal immigration. Undocumented immigration is one part of it, but this administration is also attacking very much on the legal immigration too. As the administration came in, they got the wage level 1. As Gabriela was pointing out, computer programmer, the RFE levels have gone down significantly, the denials have gone down, the amount of documentation required to get H1B has gone up very significantly. Then we had the system analyst which got into attack. So all these things are going, and they're threatening to take off the H4 EAD. We have seen a significant improvement in the 221Gs. That means when a person goes for the stamping, the consulate will say, okay, we're going to inquire about your H1B. And they're going to take their own sweet 5-6 months, and your job might not be there for 5-6 months. When you're stuck in India, you might lose a job. Then there's no purpose for you to get the H1B. So in other words, you yourself will be forced to withdraw. Then they are going to say that, look, we didn't deny it. It's the individual that has actually withdrawn the application. So this administration is systematically trying to trouble the legal immigrants too, not just the undocumented aliens, but also the legal immigrants. At this point of time, I would recommend all of those people to be completely safe and try not to travel to get the stamping if you don't have to. Now, of course, as Gabriela pointed out, that some of the times where a person falls out of status because the H1B gets denied, then there is no option but for you to leave the country. Now, that's a different scenario. If you're traveling for pleasure and all those things, I would strongly recommend that you do not travel and try to get the stamping, because we have seen a significant improvement in denials. On the H4 EAD front, we were expecting that the new regulations will be passed. The proposed regulations will be coming in June. It's getting delayed, which is a good news for us. So if there are any people who are eligible for the H4 EAD, please extend your H4 EAD if you're eligible for. Apply for the H4 EAD if you're eligible for, and that's not a problem. When the Trump administration has taken off about 900,000 undocumented aliens employment authorization, what the Trump administration said is that the further extensions will be denied. In other words, the existing EADs will be processed through, the EADs will be valid, but the further extensions will be delayed. So if you are eligible for H4 EAD, I would strongly recommend to keep filing the H4 EAD. Absolutely no problem with it at this point of time.
So if only the H4 EAD is processing, but the H4 itself has been approved, are we telling clients that they can travel, or do you recommend that they stay here?
If they have the stamping on the passport of the H4 though, when the H4 EAD alone is pending, not when the H4 plus EAD,
yes.
If the H4 EAD is alone pending, then they could travel. When the H4 EAD is pending, absolutely no problem with it. It's only when the H4 is pending and EAD is pending together, we do not recommend them to travel though. I'm also assuming that the person will have the stamping to allow them to come back into the United States. If they don't have the stamping, then no, definitely not. As you have advised, not a good idea for you to travel at all.
Yes, that's certainly a question we get a lot. If my amendment is pending and there's a family emergency back home, do we travel? And as there should be no situation, I mean, of course, emergencies arise, but if you can at all avoid it, there should be no situation where you travel while anything is pending, because it'll be considered abandoned and it'll get denied. And you should also avoid making any kind of travel plans before you actually have the physical approval, because we as attorneys can't tell you, oh yes, your case will get approved, you've got a strong case, because the fact of the matter is you may have a strong case, but USCIS still has discretion. And with the unpredictability of the administration and of the USCIS officers, it's never safe to make arrangements before you actually have your approval notice in hand.
The scenario for Sachin is that he got his amendment denied. Mm-hmm. He was moving from client A to client B location, and his amendment got denied. Can he go back and work at client A location?
If that approval is still valid, you can always go back. You can work on any approval notice that's still valid and has not been withdrawn. So as long as the I-94 and the H1B are still valid, then that's not an issue. We actually recommend that you do that while you're potentially looking for another project, assuming that the original project is still there for you to work on.
Praveen has this question: can you change the technology of approval of the I-140? That's not a major issue. Technology, it's as long as you are in the same profession of the software. So if you move from Oracle to SAP, that should not be a major problem. We do think so that a gradual improvement in your position is expected after the I-140 is approved. Of course, if you move from a computer position to a CEO of the company, that doesn't look to be a gradual improvement in the position. Technologies, as we know, do change very frequently. What exists today does not exist after a while, and things change. That's the reason why we have all these computer professionals to change all these things according to the needs of the business. So if you're moving from one technology to another technology, that's not a major issue for the I-140. You should still be fine. Kodak was one of the major company. Everybody used to take the picture. It doesn't exist now. Nobody takes the Kodak pictures. You guys invented this iPhone. You did all these smartphones and all these things. Kodak doesn't exist. So maybe there's new technologies you keep on developing. So there's nothing wrong when you move one technology to another technology.
Going back briefly to the invisible walls, let's say you are a U.S. citizen and you want to apply for a sibling. What is the processing time? Do we have an estimate for the processing time on getting?
Yeah, the time that siblings to get the U.S. citizen is taking approximately around 15 to 16 years for them to get it. And there's one thing to be noted is that when you apply for the siblings as a U.S. citizen siblings, the siblings and their spouse will get the green card in 16 years' time, and the time keeps changing, Gabriella, that it's not going to stay at 16 years. Sometimes it might go longer. Most of my experience has been it has always been longer than what I told the clients, though. So, but if the kids of the siblings become 21, then they get cut off. Mm-hmm. So only the brother or sister can come in and their spouse can come in. The kids who are about 21 will not be able to come in. Mm-hmm. So that's a major issue for a lot of those people who intend to file for their siblings, keeping an intention that the whole family will be together. Yeah. But that might not happen if the kids are going to become 21.
And feeding off of that, something to keep in mind is that in the past, let's say you had a parent or a sibling that was filing on your behalf. If you're at risk of aging out, previously a good option would be to file for the F1 visa, but now that processing time is taking well over a year. Again, it's all sort of part of these invisible walls that that the Trump administration has put up to make it harder and harder for people to stay here even in a lawful status. So keep in mind, if you're going to try and switch to F1, that needs to be done well in advance, because the odds of you being able to get that processed and stay in the country if you're 21, it's going to be a much more difficult process for you.
Kiran has a question. This question comes up very frequently, Gabriela, is that did you advise filing in the premium processing? Because there is a presumption, Gabriela, that if you file in premium processing, you get an RFE and you get a denial. Is there any truth to that?
There really isn't any truth to that. Take it from two attorneys that work at a firm that files a lot of cases. If you get an RFE because the case happens to be in premium, the odds are you are going to get that RFE anyway. Most cases these days are getting RFEs. However, I know in the past month or so, I've gotten many approvals that didn't get an RFE when it was filed in premium, and it's all about how much information, how much documentation can you provide at the initial stage. If you can provide everything USCIS is going to ask for, then you're not going to get an RFE just because you've upgraded to premium.
Vamsi has a good question. Recently, there is an article published saying that EB2 category is going to take 151 years. Is that true? Vamsi, the article was published by the Cato Institute. Actually, they said it's 150 years. It's published about a week ago. I did publish an article in February of 2018. I said it's going to take 108 years. When I published that article, I have given all the statistics that are there with the Labor Department and also with the USCIS based on the statistics at the time what the USCIS has opened. A lot of people laughed at me, oh, it's going to take 108 years. This guy must be crazy. But I have published all the statistics based on the USCIS and the Department of Labor. Now, from February of 2018 to June of 2018, now the Cato Institute published an article. Of course, there are some calculations. We did it differently. They came up with 150 years. I am completely agreeing with him. I'm not disagreeing with them. Then you might say, how come it's going to take 150 years if you file, while the priority date is actually May of 2009? Here is the thing. In 2007, the priority date used to be 2007. In 2018, it only moved 1.5 years in 10 years. Not only that, there are a lot of other applications pending in there. There are a lot of mechanisms that works depending on how much the demand for the EB2 from the other countries are going to be. That will determine how long it's going to take for you based on the determination. Previously, there are some leftover green cards that were being given to Indians, and now that is not happening much. So since that is not happening much, only 2,800 green cards were being given approximately to Indian nationals under EB2. Now that includes the family members. In other words, only 1,400 green cards to be given to the employment based. Out of the 85,000 H1B, 60% belongs to Indians. Based on that calculation and the statistics, 150 years. I have to agree with the Cato Institute, absolutely. Though I'm a little bit off than what they predicted, I agree with them on that. Do you think day one CPT is unlawful? Do you think so that the August 9th memo, which is going to affect, is that going to be a problem? This question is raised by Yes on the live. Yes, that's going to be a problem. From the beginning, Reddy Newman PC has advised strongly not to believe on the day one CPT. We have noticed that the day one CPT are those people who have actually graduated from the university, they completed their OPT, and sometimes they have gone to the STEM extension part 2, and then they are moving to these universities. And when I published an article on that, and I got a lot of angry calls from the universities that are making tons of money on students, saying that how come we cannot issue a CPT? And here is the thing though. These universities are not even conducting classes like a regular university. It doesn't look like the students are going to classes. Now, I know that Gabriella, when she was in the law school, she did work in the summertime with the law office to gain the experience. But of course, she was going to a proper school. Mm-hmm. Now, these people are not going, they're conducting once in a semester. And we disagree with the universities how they are issuing the CPT. Yes, the memo that is going to get effective on August 9th will have a significant impact on how the students are going to be impacted. So we recommend that you contact. We have covered that in the last video that we did in the, you can go to the Facebook Live last week with me and Emily. We covered very extensively on that. A person has moved from company A to company B after the I-140 has been approved. It's more than 6 months. Does he need to file a labor certification immediately, or he can file at a later date? There is no urgency for you to file a labor certification immediately. You can file a much later date. The question also asked on whether the H4 EAD can be filed when the person is transferring from company A to company B. Company A has the I-140 approval. Company B does not have an I-140 approval. At the time when you file for the H1B, can you file for the H4 EAD? The answer is clearly yes, you can file for the H4 EAD. If the I-140 has not been withdrawn for 180 days and you are moving to company B, even if the company A withdraws the I-140, it will not have any impact on the H4 EAD adjudication or the H1B adjudication. I recommend strongly to file for the H4 EAD.
That being said, is there a situation where you get an I-140 with company A and now you're with company B? Can that I-140 be ported to company B?
Absolutely. The company B, you can port the company A's priority date to company B. There are some situations, Gabriella, that the person moves from company A to company B. Company A has I-140 approval. Company B doesn't have an I-140 approval. He moves to company C, company D. And even the D company can port the date from company A as long as two conditions are met. One, the I-140 must not have been withdrawn within 180 days. The I-140 was not withdrawn before January 17th of 2017. They can port the date. Absolutely no problem with that.
When you say the I-140 was not withdrawn, is there a difference between the company withdrawing the I-140 or you simply leaving the company? If you leave the company and they don't withdraw it,
that's right.
That's okay.
So if the 180 days of January 17th of 2017 is even if you leave the company, if they don't withdraw the I-140, you can use that one. You can port that one. If the company withdraws after 180 days, it doesn't have any effect. So it's not that you left the company before 180 days. That's not the determinant factor. The determining factor is when the company has withdrawn the I-140 application. Let's go to some of the questions here. What is the duration of the H1B Cap Gap? If the Cap Gap time completes, what are the chances of H1B approval? Now, Chandu, here is the issue. The Cap Gap is only until September 30th of 2018. And if by that time the H1B is not approved, you can stay in this country legally, but you cannot work for the company. You have to wait for the H1B to kick in and to be approved. You have to stop working. You can stay in this country.
Yeah, and to answer the second part of that question, your cap gap expiring before the H1B gets adjudicated doesn't have any effect on whether or not it's going to get approved or denied. It's two completely separate issues.
Nagaraj has this question. 2 years, it was never withdrawn, and it was never withdrawn for 2 years. Unfortunately, you're out of luck. I mean, you can't put the date. The reason is that on January 17th of 2017, the new regulations kicked in, and they have given a clear directions to the USCIS how to adjudicate. Since the I-140 was being withdrawn before January 17th of 2017, you might not be able to port the date.
I notice a lot of people are asking about the lottery. Our office hasn't seen many more approvals in the past couple, or many more selections in the past couple weeks. Are we still expecting to get any more selections, or at this point, if you haven't heard, is it bad news?
We haven't received any receipt notices from past 2-3 weeks. So if you have not received any receipt notices, the check that was sent to the USCIS is not cashed. I would safely say that you probably are out of luck. One thing that you have to notice is Gabriela, last time by about June 15th or so, we started receiving the rejection notices of the lottery that were not selected in the lottery. Nowadays, we haven't received as of yet. I don't know why, but most probably we're expecting the rejection notices that were rejected in the lottery to come in soon. Last year, it was June 15th. Notices USCIS action was mailed. What does that mean? Vivek, we can't say what it means. Sometimes it might be an RFE, it could be an approval, sometimes it might be a database error. It's very hard to guess if it just says that they have mailed something. We can't tell on what it is.
There's a question about whether or not an amendment needs to be filed if a client moves to a new building that's within 2 miles. To clarify, it's not the distance that's important. What you need to look up is whether or not the 2 buildings are in the same MSA, which is the Metropolitan Statistical Area. So if you're in the same MSA, an amendment does not need to be filed. If it's outside of the MSA, then we would recommend filing an amendment, because USCIS obviously needs to be on notice, 1, of where you are, and 2, there needs to be confirmation that you're being paid in accordance with the prevailing wage for that MSA.
So it's sometimes the MSAs might cover a couple of different states also, because Washington DC might cover 3-4 states too. So it's not detrimental that how long it is depending on the address falls within the same MSA or not. So that's a good question though. More questions? Vivek says, I filed from your firm. Thank you, Vivek. Thank you for is CPT allowed after masters? This is Raman asking this question. I have to tell that it's a no. There are some exemptions available. I mean, if you were to move from a master's degree to a doctorate degree, and it's an essential part of the doctorate degree that you work. I mean, that happens when you're in a doctorate degree. You need to do a lot of research. Yes, there are some exceptions available. But the kind of CPTs that we are noticing mostly, Gabriela, is that these people are going and joining one more master's degree, just a little bit different there. And then they're not even attending the colleges. They're attending the colleges once in a semester, that too on a weekend, and sometimes once in a month. So it doesn't look like they're going to the college and CPT is part of the curriculum there. It looks like they're using the CPT as an exception. They're using the CPT, they're using the school to get the CPT, not the other way around.
Yeah, exactly. We've had, in the past, we've seen a lot of times where, for instance, somebody's H1B petition doesn't get selected in the lottery, so they say, oh, I'll just go for a degree. And there's 2 issues with that. One, you need to keep in mind, are you going for the exact same degree? If so, then there are rules about when you can and can't work there. You can't just keep repeating CPT and keep repeating your master's program. You need to be going for the next level up in education. So if you only have a bachelor's, you need to go to master's. If you have a master's, then you need to look and see what your options are for a PhD. And then the other issue, which we sort of explained earlier, is that your CPT needs to be an integral part of your program. So if you're, again, using this as just a way to work and stay in the country, but you can't prove that it's an integral part of the program, then you need to be very wary of doing CPT at all, and you certainly shouldn't be doing it from day one of the program.
Teja, is a very interesting question, Teja. Can I contact the company whether a H1B selected? Obviously, yes. Always ask them, check the check has been cashed or not. I mean, if the law firm has issued the check, law firms can check it. If the check has been issued by the company, they can always check if the check has been cashed. Sometimes, about 1-2% of the time, the receipt notices gets messed up, but the check never gets messed up. So, always check it. Another interesting question that while I'm waiting for the H1B to be selected in the lottery, can I apply for H4 plus EAD? Sure, do it. You don't know what the Trump administration is going to do it. Your H1B is not selected yet. Go and file for the H4 and H4 EAD. If by any chance your H1B gets selected, you can always withdraw the H4 and H4 EAD. So at this point of time, I would file for the H4 plus EAD if you're eligible immediately. That is in the best interest of you.
Yeah, having a backup plan is never a bad thing. The only time you would need to be careful is if you're dealing with certain non-immigrant visas that don't allow you to have immigrant intent. If you're dealing with the H visa, then that's not an issue that you need to worry about. So we encourage you to have a backup plan.
Venkat has a question. Will change of multiple employers on OPT have an impact while traveling out of USA and re-entering? Well, technically, if the OPT you have informed the university that you have changed the employers and that information is being fed in the civic system, the technically rule by wise, you are fine. However, as Gabriela was pointing out, if you don't need to travel, don't travel. I don't see a reason why. I mean, you're an OPT, you just came into the United States. I wouldn't recommend that you travel. That's our advice, though, because we're seeing a lot of problems, particularly in Chicago airport and Seattle airport. We're seeing a lot of problem. Can I file a H4? Teja has the same question. Interesting questions this guy has. Can I file H4 plus EAD at once, or should I have to wait to get the H1B? Absolutely. You can file for the H4 and EAD at the same time. And 99% of the time, your H4 and EAD will get adjudicated, will be decided on the same day. Since you're an OPT or STEM extension, the way I can sound you is because, and your H1B is not selected, file for H4 and EAD. Your wife is an H1. Absolutely nothing wrong. There's nothing like that the male can't be an H4 or something like that EAD. I was an H4. I came here on H4. I got the green card through my wife. There's nothing wrong. So please don't hesitate going back on H4. Wife and husband, they can always complement each other. Any questions?
We have somebody that's asking again about applying for a green card, but this time for somebody that's over 21. So if you've got a green card and you're applying for somebody else to get a green card that's over 21 years old, what's the time frame for that?
Green card through spouse or green card through?
Through the spouse.
The spouse, okay. I mean, the person marries a U.S. citizen.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, it's taking, before Trump administration came, it was taking, depending on which city you are, somewhere about 12 months to 14 months. But nowadays, I would say safely that it's taking about 18 months to 24 months. Now, having been said that, I told a client 12 months ago that it was taking only 12 months. Now I'm changing the story to 18 months to 24 months. So if the administration continues the same process, maybe 24 months down the line, I might say, wow, I told you 24 months at that time. Now I'm going to change to 36 months. Mm-hmm. So this is all Trump administration that's doing it. My brother coming from India to US on L1B status. Their company filed my brother's L1B. Can he come to USA? Can he apply the green card? What is the procedure? Yeah, L1B persons can apply for the green card, absolutely no problem with it. Based on your name, I'm assuming that your brother is from India. Please note that it's going to take 150 years for him to get the green card. It's very tough to live nowadays, but I'm expecting medical technologies to be aware of that. Now, here is a problem with the L1B, the 150 years, because L1B is only valid for 5 years. So if you apply the green card, you cannot extend the L1B visa. So the prudent thing for him after he comes into L1B visa, if he wants to stay here on a long-term basis, is that the prudent thing is that he should convert into H1B, and based on the labor and I-140 he filed, he can keep on extending the H1B. But if you remain on the L1 visa, you would not be able to extend it after 5 years.
Now, if they're on the L1 visa and they convert to the H1B before the I-140 has been filed, is there concern about the time that they've already spent on L1?
That's right. The good question, Gabriella, is that any period of time that a person spends on the L1B or L1A will be counted towards the 6-year limit of the H1B. As the audiences already know that the H1B is limited only for 6 years and can be extended beyond 6 years only based on the labor certification I-140 approval. So yes, the L1B period will be counted towards the 6 years. Any other questions? Yash has another question. I have 1.5 years of validity of my passport and just got 3 years H1B approval. If I get to visa stamping, will there be 3 years or what will be the I-94? When you go for the visa stamping, you would be getting a 3 years. However, when you enter into United States, the I-94 might be given only for 1.5 years. The prudent way for you, Yash, is that go ahead and get the passport extension. Even though it is expiring 1.5 years, you can extend the passport way before. That's not a problem. Another advice, as Gabriella was telling, if you don't have to go for stamping, please don't go. And believe us, you're just not making help for yourself. You're also making our life very uncomfortable. We like our clients to stay safely, get the green card. That's what we want. We don't want unsafe things, and you're risking yourself. It's just like, hard doctor. And if you keep on saying that I'm going to eat the fried chicken morning, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and obviously, the guy will say no. And this is going to, stamping is like that for us.
All right.
Thank you guys for coming and listening. Thank you, Gabriella.
Thank you.
It's very nice. Very nice. And please come back and visit us at live at 5 o'clock next Tuesday. As always, we'll be there every Tuesday at 5 o'clock. Thank you, Gabriella.
Thank you.